Hey there, peoples! As you might already be aware, Hyperdimension Neptunia is coming up on its 15th anniversary, which, needless to say, is a very exciting time for the franchise. And as part of the celebration, Compile Heart has even made a Neptunia-focused Twitter to coincide with an SNS campaign they're running alongside the anniversary. Among which, they stated that they'd be announcing various events and Neptunia-related news as time goes on. This has led several fans, myself included, to speculate that this Twitter account is also going to be used for the announcement of the inevitable new mainline game that Compile Heart has spoken about on a few occasions. Considering this isn't anything like they've done before, I'd say that the chances of them showing off a new game, and it being this new mainline game that they've talked about, are fairly high. Not guaranteed, just high. Therefore, in light of this very likely upcoming trailer, I've put together 5 ideas that are essentially my predictions for what I hope to be a part of the next mainline game, and these will all be separated into their own category of sorts. At the time of writing this script, August 19th is still about 24 days away, meaning that some of the things that I say in this video could end up being wrong, or they could miraculously end up being correct. Whatever the case, I'm looking forward to what the future holds for us NEP fans. As always, take all of this with the fattest grain of salt ever. I don't want people to try and spread any false information as a result of my hopes, so if you would, please keep this in mind throughout the video. With that said though, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So, what exactly did I mean earlier when I said that these predictions would be sorted into their own category? Essentially, these 5 predictions of mine are going to be focusing on different aspects of the game that have little to no correlation with one another. This means you won't end up seeing predictions that have overlap with each other, such as, I think turn-based combat will return, and I think they will add this mechanic to the gameplay, or any other kinds of combinations. It's more fun to focus on aspects entirely unrelated to each other, you know. With that said though, what are these categories going to be? Well, I think you'll find it somewhat surprising. Here are my 5 categories. 1. A recurring character. 2. Character design. 3. Dungeon types. 4. Music. And 5. Release date. You might notice that I've omitted talking about the gameplay here, and simply put, I don't think predicting anything relating to the gameplay is very fun. It's been made clear that Compile Heart has been experimenting with different gameplay types recently, as seen with Sisters vs Sisters, Game Maker Revolution, and even Riders vs Dogus. However, I'm sure we all know that there's only a couple of possibilities for what the gameplay is going to be like in this next mainline. It's either going to be a turn-based battle system, like the Rebirth trilogy and V2 before it, or it'll be a real-time combat system, like with Sisters vs Sisters and Game Maker Revolution. I don't think there's any other choice really, but hey, I could be wrong and Compile Heart does something completely different instead. Regardless though, let's get right into the predictions, starting with... Number 1. Recurring character. As is expected with pretty much any Neptunia game, there's going to be a recurring character from a previous game, and we should all be aware of that. This series has a bit of a reputation in that regard after all. However, the question is, who will be returning? Or, better yet, who won't be returning? I want to do something a little different this time. Instead of predicting who will be returning from a previous game, I'll be predicting who won't be returning. And in this case, I'm going to predict this will be the first mainline game that will not feature R4 as an antagonist. As most of you NEP fans know, R4 is this series' most recurring villain. Of the 24 Neptunia games that currently exist, not counting the mobile games, 6 of them feature R4 as an antagonist, 11 if you count remakes, and 15 of them feature R4 in general. She's also an antagonist in the series' anime adaptation, meaning she's a recurring villain even across different forms of Neptunia media. Suffice to say, R4 has made a lot of appearances in the series, and this can, admittedly, make her feel overused and obnoxious to encounter. However, my reasoning for believing she won't appear in this next game doesn't have anything to do with her usage rate. Rather, the circumstances surrounding her appearance make it difficult to envision her being brought back as an antagonist for a new mainline game. Hyperdimension R4 is currently dead. At the end of Mark II, Netgear defeated R4 using the combined shares of every person in game industry, and it's even confirmed in the ending that the deity of sin is outright deceased. Sisters vs. Sisters did bring her back to be the game's main villain, but in the true ending of that game, Nepgear pretty much retconned the entirety of the game's events, meaning R4 is still dead and doesn't look to be resurrecting anytime soon. Ultra Dimension R4 turned to a life of being an eggplant farmer, as shown in the true ending of Victory. She's even shown to have grown a bit of a heart, as despite Warachu's brazen attitude, she's still willing to pay him the minimum wage that they agreed on, and would have even paid him overtime if not for him wanting to go elsewhere. Granted, yeah, she does still seem to want to get revenge on the goddesses at some point, but it's unlikely to happen in my opinion. And lastly, Zero Dimension R4 can't exist as we know it. Zero Dimension R4 was a creation from Kurome's memories of R4, and because Kurome's existence seemingly fused with Uzume's existence in V2's revival ending, it's seemingly impossible for her to be recreated. Even if she could be, Uzume probably wouldn't even want to try and recreate R4 from her memories to begin with, so that's off the table as well. So yeah, unless Compile Heart finds a way to bring one of these three R4s back for the next main line, I don't think she's going to appear as an antagonist in it whatsoever. Now, is it possible she may make a cameo? Probably. It's not like they haven't done cameo appearances in the series before, especially in Sisters vs. Sisters, where we had characters like the Oracles and the Gold Third from previous games appear in chirper messages you can see on your timeline. So R4 being name-dropped in some dialogue, or even making a super brief physical appearance, isn't off the table, but I wouldn't exactly count on it. Moving on from that, let's talk about... Number 2. Character design. So, we know that Compile Heart typically doesn't try to change the designs of returning characters when they develop a mainline game. Hell, the most drastic change in the form of Neptune's jersey dress was quickly abandoned once V2 came out, and we haven't seen it resurface in a game since then, outside of being a costume from Neptune, which I honestly don't blame them for. I try and stay as far away from Victory as possible too.
Welcome to
You just teased him.
All joking aside though, I think they're going to take a different approach this time around when it comes to the character designs. So let's go for a leap of faith with this one. I'm predicting that each of the main goddesses will receive some sort of design change in the next game. The reason for this is pretty simple. Neptune and Nepgear are likely to have some changes to their designs based on the New Year's 2025 artwork created by Tsuneko, depicting Neptune, Nepgear, and Histoire all watching a star shower over what seems to be the city of Planeptune. Most notably, Neptune and Nepgear have outfits that are different from the outfits that they normally wear. Neptune has the clearest differences, sporting a new parka dress as well as white and grey fingerless gloves with the Planeptune insignia on them. Now, you might be thinking, but Roxy, that's just a New Year's artwork. That doesn't mean they're getting new outfits for this upcoming game or whatever nonsense you're saying. But to that I say, think of the Neptunia New Year's artwork that came before this one. This artwork is from New Year's 2021, depicting the goddess candidates in celebratory Japanese attire, which I'm not going to try and guess the name of because I'd look like a buffoon if I did. Seems pretty unassuming at first, but when you compare this artwork to the artwork from New Year's 2025, it does make me wonder something. Why would Tsuneko choose to go in a drastically different direction for something as simple as a New Year's artwork? Especially when she went the extra mile in giving both Neptune and Nepgear designs that look like they'd be a part of a new Neptunia game. It's not as though Tsuneko is giving them outfits we've never seen before. No, these are outfits that have the same basis as their usual clothes, just with some slight alterations in their design, such as Neptune's parka seemingly gaining pockets on the sleeves. Maybe I'm just coping or something, but to me, Tsuneko depicting the Nep sisters in these newer but still familiar clothes, rather than Japanese celebratory clothes, seems less like an it'd be cool choice and more like something that teases what Neptune and Nepgear might look like in this next mainline. As for what the other 6 goddesses would get, I don't know. It's hard to imagine what new designs they would get without some points of reference beyond the ones we get here with the Nep sisters. But I think them getting new designs is very possible if the New Year's 2025 artwork is anything to go off of. Anyways, with that finished, let's move on to... Number 3. Dungeon types. As has been made very apparent to us over the 15 years of this series' existence, the dungeons and their designs are a pretty integral part of the world we explore. And what has also been made pretty apparent to us is just how much Compile Heart loves to reuse past dungeon designs, even down to the layouts themselves. Now, obviously, they don't wholly reuse assets, they still have some original creations in this regard. In V2 alone, there were 10 new dungeon types introduced. The Ruins type dungeon, the Subway type dungeon, the Cherry Blossom dungeon, the Arcade dungeon, the Stadium dungeon, the Wireframe Maze dungeon, the Golden Summit dungeon, the Battleship dungeon, the Theme Park dungeon, and lastly, the nep-nep dungeon. As much as I hate it. That's over half of the dungeon types you find in V2. That's pretty impressive. So let's predict that Compile Heart does what they did with V2 here, and make the prediction that over half the dungeon types implemented in the next mainline game will be entirely new. We can actually turn to a recent example of this being done. Game Maker Revolution features 16 new dungeon types, of the 21 or so that exist in the game. Those being the Forest of Future Relics, the Volcanic Cave, the Office Interior, the Sunny Plains, you know, the one with windmills and stuff, that one, Foggy Mountaintops, the Gold Third Company Interior and its 4 variations, the Arcade Center, the Underground Path, the Glowing Ore Cave, the Divine Temple, the Wetlands, the Great Desert, and the Ultimate R4 Company's Tower. That is a lot of new dungeon types, and that's not even mentioning the racetrack, which, while not a dungeon, is still an area that the developers created from scratch for you to play in. When you consider that half of V2's dungeon list consisted of dungeons that appeared in previous games, it just makes Game Maker's dungeon lineup that much more impressive. So if this is the route that we can expect the developers to go down, then I'm more than confident in saying that over half of the dungeon types we'll see in this next mainline will be new material for us to experience. Now, what exactly could they do? I don't know. Perhaps they could have us explore through the other nations' basilicums, kind of like what they did with the Planet Tower in Sisters vs. Sisters. But until we know for sure, it's just speculation. Stepping away from visual designs, let's move on to audio design with... Number 4. Music. Hyperdimension Neptunia as a series may have a lot of flaws, but one area that it pulls no punches in is the music. Holy mother of Isti on a stick, this series has some absolute bangers, and not a day goes by where I don't listen to at least one song from the series' overall library. However, there are also multiple tunes from this series that are being reused in so many games across the series. Even almost 15 years later, we have these same songs from Mark II still being used. So why don't we amp things up a little, and tune our brains to a prediction that, while unlikely, I'd still like to see. Every song in the next game's soundtrack will be entirely new, and there will be no recurring tracks whatsoever. Now, I won't be the first to admit that the Neptunia series hasn't ever really been in the best position to simply stop reusing assets from their previous games. However, I don't think this is entirely true in the music department. Consider, for a moment, that V2's soundtrack possesses 46 new tracks, including the opening and ending songs, of the 64 that exist in the game, meaning the other 18 are reused from previous games. That's over 70% of the game's soundtrack consisting of new tunes. To me, this is just proof that, if they really choose to, Compile Heart is more than capable of creating a whole soundtrack without the need to compromise and reuse tracks from older games. Considering that this upcoming mainline is very highly anticipated, and will probably coincide with the series' 15th anniversary, I've got some hopes. And lastly, to end off the video, we've got the simplest topic of them all. Number 5. Release date. So when do I think this game is getting released? Well, as of writing this script, the last game to be released was Neptunia Riders vs. Dogus back in June of 2024. This, in combination with Neptunia's tendency to release games on a yearly basis nowadays, one would assume a later 2025 release period. However, I'm going to take a different approach and predict the new game will be released in winter 2026. As much as I would love an earlier release date and for it to be in 2025, I don't think we're going to be seeing that with this game. We can look at 2 of their most recent games and use them as examples for what I'm talking about: Sisters vs. Sisters and Game Maker Revolution. When you compare the dates of when the games were initially teased at and when the games were released respectively, we can see that there's a gap of at least 5 months between the 2 dates. So if we're to assume that this upcoming mainline follows the same pattern as these 2 games, then the earliest we can expect to see it would be in January 2026. Short and to the point, but I think this one is reasonable if we're going by the patterns that we've seen with previous games in this franchise. Well, there you have it, boys, girls, and everyone else. Those are 5 of my predictions for what we could expect to see in this, hopefully, upcoming mainline game. Once again, take all of this with a grain of salt. None of what I'm proposing is confirmed, and at the end of the day, none of this may end up becoming true in the first place. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see what they do. Hopefully you were able to see where I was coming from in this video though. If Compile Heart ends up showing a trailer for a new game on the date of the series' anniversary, I'll consider making some sort of reaction and analysis video for it, so I'm hoping they don't keep me waiting too long on that front. As a closing message, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this from me. So, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you all on my next upload. Peace!